Hello. It's a little video on the Bible and the modern environmental movement. Note that quite a few verses in the Bible call for care of animals and the environment. For example, right there in the Ten Commandments, it says that you are to give Sabbath rest to your working animals. The last verse of Jonah mentions God's concern for the animals of the city. Proverbs 12:10 says, "It is a cruel man indeed, who is cruel to his animals." Then we have things like the command not to cut down trees when an army is besieging a city. And there it is in Deuteronomy. So that's certainly care for the environment. However, I believe that the modern environmental movement has gone too far and has lost all balance. Despite this, a lot of Christians today want to get on board with them. For example, the church I heard about recently, whose mission statement says, loving God, loving others, and caring for God's creation. Well, that's good aspiration, but it's simply not biblical to elevate caring for God's creation to be on a level with loving God and loving others, other people. Now here are some verses which give the correct balance of things. Genesis 9:2, which says in the NLT, "All the wild animals, large and small, all the birds and fish will be afraid of you. I have placed them in your power." Here's the Hebrew phrase here, "in your hand I have put them." You could translate it directly. So the King James says, "Into your hand they are delivered." My translation is, "They are at your disposal." I believe this is a good, normal, modern English way of saying what this verse is saying in the Hebrew. They are at your disposal. All of nature is at the disposal of people, the people that God created. More examples, you see Genesis 1:28, Psalm 8:6. Then we have Matthew 12:12, where Jesus says, "How much more is a person worth than a sheep?" So you can look that verse up in its context if you like. And then here's an interesting one, Deuteronomy 25:4, "Don't muzzle an ox treading out grain." But Paul twice quotes this in the New Testament, and both times he applies it to people. 1 Corinthians and 1 Timothy. Of course, none of this gives permission to anybody to exploit excessively or greedily nature that God has created there. But that's not what these verses are looking at. They're just assuming that people will do it responsibly. Nevertheless, nature is at the disposal of humanity. By contrast, the modern environmental movement seems to have little care for people, and sometimes it betrays an anti-human ideology at its core. For example, how often does modern news media express concerns about people encroaching on the territory of animals? But what about the other way around? Who has the greater right to the territory, the animals or the humans? Under pressure from environmental organizations, a Pacific Island country I heard about recently has banned killing of crocodiles. But what about the crocodiles that kill people? Do the environmentalists care about them? You've got to question that. However, God does. God does care about people, and God has placed all of nature into the hand at the disposal of people. It's for them to use. They needn't cringe and think that they have to give way to the animals and do this, that, and the next thing, provided they don't exploit nature and animals greedily and excessively. They are there for us. God regards people as worth a lot more